I don't know if you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
I hope you can still hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Rotary Youth Leadership Awards. Each summer, thousands of young people are selected to attend Rotary-sponsored leadership camps or seminars in the United States, Australia, Canada, India, France, Argentina, in Korea, and numerous other countries. In an informal out-of-door atmosphere, 50 to 75 outstanding young men and or women spend a week in a challenging program of discussions, inspirational addresses, leadership training, and social activities designed to enhance personal development, leadership skills, and good citizenship. The official name of this activity is the Rotary Youth Leadership Award Program, RYLA. Although the event is occasionally referred to as Camp Royal, Camp Enterprise, Youth Leadership Seminars, Youth Conferences, or other terms. The RYLA program began in Australia in 1959, when young people throughout the states of Queensland were selected to meet with Princess Alexandra, the young cousin of Queen Elizabeth II. The Rotarians of Brisbane, who hosted the participants, were impressed with the quality of the young leaders. It was decided to bring youth leaders together each year for a week of social, cultural, and educational activities. The RYLA program gradually grew throughout all the Rotary districts of Australia and New Zealand. In 1971, the RI Board of Directors adopted RYLA as an official program of Rotary International. Rotarian President, fellow Rotarian, the Rotary information for today.
Thank you very much, Yoga. And I believe that every day is a learning day for us all. Whilst you were reading it, it came to my knowledge through PhD Stan of the Rotary Club of Abome Calavi in Benin, who is on call at the moment, that our RYLA is now Rotary Youth Leadership Academy. I believe there's some nomenclature that is being changed within the Rotary space, and every day, like I indicated, is a learning day for us. So just take note, RYLA is a Rotary Leadership Academy. It's something that I'm getting to hear for the very first time. But yes, announcement, fellow Rotarians.
For the day, Dr. Angela Anandappa is a food industry leader specializing in innovation and food safety. She has worked on product development, scale-up, launches, and manufacturing for over 20 years. She consults on food safety systems, implementation and management, with a recent focus on using biotech in the food industry and developing alternatives to traditionally produced foods. She leads the Alliance for Advanced Sanitation, a nonprofit dedicated to innovations in sanitation and improving industrial hygiene throughout the world and teaches food science and food safety risk management at Northeastern University. She has been an esteemed member of the International Association for Food Protection for many years, having served as a vice chair in the past and currently serving as the chairperson of the Food Chemical Hazard and Food Allergy PDG. She has previously held positions as a research professor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, at Kraft Foods, session manager, supply chain food safety, led the Food Systems Innovation Center in Kentucky, and worked with biotechnology companies such as Vector Biotechnologies, Agilent Biotechnologies, and Opron, part of Eurofins. Dr. Anandappa earned her PhD in food microbiology from the University of Kentucky. Dr. Anandappa, the floor is yours. We are very pleased to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. And Andrews, thank you for inviting me. I hope you can hear everything I said so far.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. So I'm really happy to be here for many reasons, to join you all, because a lot of things that I do really align very well with Rotary's mission and many of the things that Rotarians have been doing for many, many years. So to give you a little bit of background, I think that bio was probably nice and concise, but primarily I work with food companies. Food safety is a focus. We want global food safety to be a thing for everyone, and we want that to be something that all of us all over the world reach for and are knowledgeable about. So that's primarily what I do in various aspects of my work. And in working with food companies on food safety systems, one of the most important things that we always realize is that companies cannot do it all by themselves. They really need their employees to come from various places of good knowledge. They also need to live and work in communities where those individuals who come to their companies are able to have good hygiene in their own homes, which really helps us have better food safety in those companies. So just to think about the question really that was posed to me, which is how do we make food and medicine work together? And how do those two things work preventively for us to have better health? I wanted to put together a couple of questions that might help us. So food, water, and hygiene are so integrated as things that we all take for granted. Food, water, and hygiene go together, but not everyone in the world has access to all of those things in the same level. And these are World Health Organization priorities that clearly Rotary has done a lot with all over the world, and it's one of the top priorities in terms of the mission to be accomplished. So let's think about how these are interconnected. It's having access to clean water is something that some parts of the world take for granted. And I will say that I live in Chicago, where we have one of the Great Lakes in which the water is very, very clean. And that's one of the most privileged places in terms of having that kind of clean water, which is not true for many other parts of the world, and right now I'm in Thailand and I walk around and I see all the rivers and little streams that are throughout here with canals. And the waterways here are really not anywhere near where they need to be in terms of clean for human beings to take water out of them or even bathe in them. And this is exactly what I see happening here. So when we think about the safety of our food, specifically even in places like here in Thailand, where people see it as a tourist destination, and people see it as an attractive place to be in, looking directly around you, you notice that that is not true for all people who live here. So we'd like to see that our mission as human beings includes every person in the community. And so that's one of our things that we'd like to make sure we include from the perspective of business. Okay, so food as medicine or medicine as food. You may have been reading some of the books, or if you've seen lots of discussion going on in the world about food as medicine and whether food can be used as a medicine. And then, of course, what does that really mean to us? And should we interpret it as a food? So I wanted to think about this from the perspective of the scientific part of this, and then how we think about it as just consumers of food. So scientifically, one of the things that we are doing all over the world is looking for new ways and new things that we can do in agriculture to help bring new products to the market. And that includes, many of the taglines you see in terms of innovative products, including, a focus on organics, a focus on the health benefits of those products, and of course, whether or not it can have some effects on reducing various types of illnesses. And on the flip side of that, we have to look at, what does that really mean in terms of, people's health? And as food safety professionals, one of the things that they're always looking for is there a potential for a product to have risks that the product inherently puts into the market because you're introducing that particular product? It also, whether or not it has the potential to cause outbreaks, any kind of foodborne illness outbreak. So whether it be something that's really acute, that happens very quickly, or over a long period of time. So we're always looking at weighing these risks and benefits, and then making sure that those risks do not get into the hands of consumers. So it's balancing these things. And when we think about this idea of food, and if food is a medicine, this is actually one of the areas in which this is gets a little tricky, because there are things that may be considered foods in certain communities or certain cultures, or medicines in certain communities and cultures that haven't been fully studied. There isn't a really good data set for us to understand them scientifically. There's a lot of information in the scientific arena that says, aha, this is how you really assess these things, and yet we're missing a lot of information. So one of the things that we're lacking from the scientific perspective is really a deep understanding of some things that traditional medicine or traditional ways in which certain illnesses have been addressed in some communities, especially in rural communities, especially in Asia. These kinds of places need a little more information before the consumer should be allowed to have that kind of food based on their risk profile. And yet marketing has taken these things forward, and so we have these products that are entering the market and entering international commerce and being traded all over the place. So it's one of the things that we are challenged with right now, and it really is the challenge of whether certain products should be used in a certain way, and should it be used as medicine, and of course, should that be used frequently? So maybe eating certain things, maybe drinking certain products may be fine once or twice, but having that frequently is what we call a dosage issue. So you'll have that something introduced in the diet that you'll be saying, I hope that this particular product will help me with my diabetes or potential blood pressure issues. Those are two areas in which we see products being introduced without the adequate information to help mitigate risks. So I'm not talking about pharmaceutical products. I'm talking about the idea of nutraceutical products, or the area of foods that people consider to be healthful. Another area is diets. So diet and dieting information that's put out there by various groups, and sometimes nonprofit organizations that do have some information that's useful to help people make decisions. Some of them are not available to all people who need to use them. So these are areas that we're always challenged with in working with that information. So with all of this murkiness that we see in our food system, how do we stay secured? I think this is the biggest question that we always have from a food safety perspective, from the perspective of keeping our planet secure and our ability and securing our ability to cultivate, as well as keeping nutrition at a high level all over the world. So we're always looking for the balance here. I wanted to provide you with the opportunity, I guess, to pose the questions that you would like for me to answer if there's anything that's popping up. So please do put things in the chat if there's anything that comes up while I'm talking. But also, let me know if this is where you'd like to focus more on or focus more elsewhere, right? So I'd love to hear that. But so the question is, how do we stay secured, both to make sure we continue our access to secure food supply chains, as well as to have safe food always coming through those supply chains to everybody who's participating. Okay, so the things that we're always challenged with in terms of business risks are ones that we also think about when it comes to food safety, and when it comes to, do we use those foods as nutritional products or as medicinal products? And I want to be careful about whether or not we want to use the word medicine in characterizing a food, right? But some of the biggest drivers of these issues that we're seeing include what I've had put here on the left, which is things like deforestation. We're aware that deforestation is occurring all over the world, and it's one of our big challenges in terms of keeping our climate in good shape. And so many of them are related issues. Many of them are the ones that the WHO is trying to push in terms of how do we mitigate this and how do we solve these issues before they get too bad. We're having an issue with the clean water. There's a lot more water that we wish we had in places that we don't currently have. There are aquifers that are drying up, and we don't see this in some parts of the world, but in others they're drying up because of various activities, commercial activities that are pulling out these water sources or using it for other industrial purposes. We're having a population pressure. We reached 8 billion people in the last 6 months. And of course, poverty that's all over the world. And all of this put together is something that both drives a certain amount of the climate change issues we're seeing, but also climate change sometimes can be seen as the reason why some of these things are happening. So depending on the issue, we have this interconnected web of issues that our planet is dealing with. And what do we do in the food industry to help with some of these issues? These are the issues I've got on the right. And so these are sort of big areas which some link up to things that I do frequently, some don't, but these are areas in which our entire industry is working quite a bit. So looking at new ways to automate and new ways to put in engineering solutions in as many places as possible. And why are we doing that? Primarily because labor is an important supply that we need, and some of the labor activities that we're looking to continue to do are better done by using more smart solutions, are better done by using solutions that put fewer human beings at risk, and also ones that can be more efficient. So innovation is the other one that we'll deal with here, which is innovation to create new products, innovation to create products that are less harmful, less energy costly in terms of energy, as well as those that have better nutritional profiles. So these are all ways in which we can think about from an industry perspective, but all of these also need to come together from the perspective of policy and the perspective of being able to introduce products into the market and be able to trade, between countries. So all of this is supported by better education, which we need all over the world. Okay, and you may have heard this, what is measured gets improved. And I feel that that is one of the key things that resonates with me when it comes to both food safety and when it comes to whether or not we can drive these things forward and see, if our food supply can be improved, right? Certainly in the US, we have these numbers. We have a pretty good breakdown of numbers. We know that 1 in 6 cases of foodborne illness are reported, and we have a database in which we report these. Globally, WHO says about 1 in 10 cases of foodborne illness are reported. We know all of these are even probably lower. And just today I was speaking to someone here in Thailand, in which I heard that several people in the US Embassy, about half of the employees within the last year had a case of foodborne illness, and they were hospitalized. So these are numbers that don't make it to some of the places in which we monitor these things, but also they happen, and some of them are not reported in a meaningful way. So we'd like to see better measures for this coming from all areas, so that whatever level you're at a company, at a local government agency, in health departments, all of these areas are able to contribute to this data source. And of course, we're interested in making sure that the data related to hygiene and how people are using various chemicals can be better managed and better communicated, because this is one of the key areas that are important, not just to keep the food supply safe, but it's one of the biggest issues that we're interested in solving. And that's, if you haven't been monitoring this a lot, we can talk about this at another time, but I'd love to be able to talk about antimicrobial or antibiotic resistance. It's one of WHO's priority areas in which we're always looking to see if we can minimize, mitigate, and be able to have a better use of antibiotics and antimicrobials so that our pathogens that are out there that you're targeting don't have the chance of developing a resistance. So overall, these are the things that we're looking at in terms of food safety and in terms of mitigating illness. So all of these things put together are what we consider necessary to have food be able to contribute to a better life for us, and food be able to contribute even as a source of medicine. So I wanted to leave you with some of the ideas that I have as Rotarians that you can think about. Hopefully these can propel your actions and activities wherever you are. And these are ones that we're hoping to have more people participate in. So a better understanding of our own risk factors. So this is on an individual basis, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, all of these areas in which each one of us understands our risk and can work with our doctors to help prevent them or reduce our risks. And then of course, to have a better understanding and teaching about the health benefits of having a balanced diet, better nutrition, and of course, having better hygiene in our own homes, and how to handle food when it is something that you're responsible for. We'd like to stop the spread of health misinformation. There's a lot of it out there, and I think that is one of the most challenging areas we deal with. If you were to just Google something, or if you were to speak to someone who might be online or given some space to advertise a product, sometimes the information they put out there is questionable. So these are things that we'd like to have measures for, and ways in which we can help stop the spread of health misinformation. And one way to do that is by reducing the sensationalizing risky behavior. So we have all kinds of social media that's really helpful for this right now. And it's actually causing challenges for us from the perspective of food safety. So we'd like to see ways in which novel foods are introduced without sensationalizing the negative effects of some kind of an issue, right? And making basic sanitation really a universal priority. It's important for us. We'd like to promote better diets. We'd like to have more people who are aware of who to look to as an expert in the area of food and nutrition, also in the area of preventing illness. And so if you want to do preventive health, there's food experts, nutritionists, food scientists, food safety people who know a lot about this. And then if you want to treat an illness, we want people to look directly to physicians. These two people don't know the same things per se. They do have some common things, but I think having those ways in which you apply them in the right places are very helpful. But the regular person needs to be taught, needs to have this in their culture of how to do that. And then, of course, all of this put together, we have a better system that we can envision, but all of this also requires a lot more community development, a lot more community assistance, and people like you at Rotary to help with some of these things. So I'll leave you with some of those thoughts. And also, if you have any follow-up questions, or want to talk more about this, or any kind of programmatic thing, we can certainly follow up. So this is my contact information. And then if you have any questions, I think this would be a good time to ask any. I appreciate it.
Wow, brilliant presentation, Dr. Angela. Most grateful. Fellow adherents, this is the time for questions. If you have any questions, comment, contribution to respect of what Dr. Angela Anandappa has just made, kindly show by hand. Any questions, comments, or contributions, please? Any questions, comments, or contributions? Whilst we wait for that, I know some people find issues in trying to unmute. If you can raise your hand, just okay. So I see an applause in the chat. Okay, I see an applause. I think a great presentation. Okay, if you're finding it difficult in showing your hand, you can just unmute yourself and begin to speak. It should be the first person. Whilst on that, we want to say, I don't say a very big thank you, Dr. Angela. It's somewhere a little about after midnight in Thailand at the moment, and you're waking up from sleep just to make this presentation.
No problem. It's fun to do it sometimes, Yeah. It's 2 a.m. It's 2:14, and I have now drunk 2 cups of coffee. Which is.
I was wondering if you'll be able to wake up and do this presentation. Very good. It's good.
So I have a question for you guys, if you don't have a question for me yet, but okay. I would love to hear, from the perspective.
I see a hand up. Dr. Angela, I see a hand up. Lieutenant Edwin.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I wasn't going to ask a question, but when you came up with the question of the coffee, then I thought it's interesting to find, I keep telling people that very soon, if we are not careful, we'll have to stop eating. Just because what is recommended today by a group of scientists. So now let's focus on food scientists. Today, this is good. Tomorrow, the same thing is said to be not good for for the human being. And I'm coming to coffee. I mean, all over the years we've been told coffee is dangerous, this and that and that. And of course, I've just recently read about coffee also promoting longevity. So what is the right answer for people like me who want to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or that sort of thing? Because we always been told something different almost every other day about some of the foods that we get used to. Why do we have to go through all this?
I love your question, because as I told you, I drank 2 cups of coffee, right? And it's such an important thing for me because I've been drinking coffee since the age of 5. My father gave me coffee because I used to have a hard time waking up, right? And it's in the West in particular, you hear that coffee is not recommended for little children. If my father had been paying attention to that, I would not have got coffee, and I would not be drinking as much coffee as I do. But I don't drink a lot of coffee. I drink maybe 2 or 3 cups a day at maximum, sometimes only 1. There are times when I don't drink any. But it's a question that I have thought about myself, so I like this question very much. And I like it very much from the perspective of the science and from the perspective of a coffee drinker. And also, you know, as someone who's been involved in so much coffee trade with some companies I've worked with, I find that this is a very interesting question. So I'll tell you a couple of things that I have found interesting. If you were to take the data relating to coffee and coffee's negative effects on our food or coffee's negative effect on our health, there really are some instances in which coffee or caffeine can be negative for people, and particularly for children. And I think one of the biggest things that we know in the last, I'd say maybe 10, 20 years or so, probably more like 10, is that health profiles for each individual is something different, and that we need to think about in a very customized sort of way. So what you might have, you know, work really well in your body isn't true for me, and that's true for someone else. So as we have access to more tools and more ways in which we can conduct science, one of the things that happens is we get more information that we can make use of. And so we get more information that we can say, aha, we knew this before, and now we know this additional thing. That additional information is what I think is, you know, it's challenged sometimes in which it's communicated. So in terms of making an article be helpful or news about it, that sensationalism that I mentioned is one of the things that happens. So people say, you know, you might have CNN or some news article in which it's written, or someone says, aha, we thought coffee was not good for you, and coffee is good, I can have more coffee, right? And you'll have the people on TV say, oh my goodness, how wonderful this is, right? So I think this is one of the things where it's the opportunity for the food industry to educate and be able to say exactly how they got to that conclusion. And they miss out on this opportunity all the time. There was similar information on chocolate not so long ago. So, you know, essentially we have lots of information that isn't being communicated as well as it could. So far, from what I can tell, coffee is probably going to be better for more people than not. Again, I would probably not start it with children who are 5 years old like my dad did, but I certainly wouldn't say don't drink coffee. There may be other things that are worse for you. So the spectrum is such where, you know, one thing may be worse than another, and we just have more information about it at this point. So I hope that was helpful.
Well, thank you very much. Doc, I want to confirm something. For me personally, all right, there's a particular kind of meal. If I don't take it within a particular week, the following week, I'll feel like I'm falling ill, or I'm getting sick or something. And I've noticed that over the past few years, so every single week, that particular meal, I need to have it at least once a week. Is this something that I am addicted to it, or I mean, what would you advise? What would you advise?
Well, it depends on the meal, right? I think it really depends on that. There are certain micronutrients and minerals that we may be getting in the form of certain diets, and I may not know exactly what that profile is like for you, but certainly there are micronutrients that we need to get on some frequency in our bodies, and if we don't get it, we see an effect in our health, in our mental state in addition. And then, energy levels, change during the day, during the week. All of those kinds of things can happen, and they really are real effects of changes in our diet.
Well,
So you're probably getting something from that particular meal. I don't know what the meal is. Some meals are a little, challenging to deal with, but depending on what it is, it may be one of those things that your body really needs.
yeah. It's a local meal. Maybe the next time you come to Ghana, we'll have a feel of that. But you indicated you had a question for us. Maybe now be the time.
If you give me the opportunity to make it worthwhile coming to Ghana, I will be there and we shall have it.
Very well. Doc, you had a question for us?
I did, yeah. So I think one of the questions that I have for you all is, if from in your Rotary Club, in the region you're in, what are the things that you feel we can help with education in terms of food safety? And I'm asking this question from the perspective of knowing that there are various parts of the world in which you have niches of information that's missing, or niches of interesting things that are quite different than certain others. Last week, I was told, don't look at such and such. And they were really telling me, don't look at the state of how this food is prepared, but you should eat it, right? And that's a cultural norm there. And I'm not going to name where it is, but it's not something that I can do, right? I'm going to look at it and I'm going to see, okay, is this something that I want to eat? Is this something that I want to suggest that someone else eats? But it was okay for them to say that, and they were okay with telling you that that is something that they valued, that particular food or the way it's made, more than the safety of that food.
So, Doc, in one line, what is the question? I think I missed it.
Okay, so in the context of what I presented in terms of food safety, what are some of the issues that you see that need to be addressed in Ghana? I know in 2015 there was a new rule to help Ghana be more progressive in terms of food safety, and lots more work has been done. Is it really happening as consumers there? Do you see that this is something that you're seeing in practice?
Okay, I see a hand up. PE Cosmos, kindly unmute, and then I guess you attempt to answer the question.
Yes, good evening, fellow Rotarians, our guests. I think in my region, I think there's this meal we call wache, rice and beans. But normally, if you go to the posh areas, I mean a proper restaurant, you not enjoy like the one that is close to, where the ghettos. That's where we enjoy most of our wache. And sometimes if you even see the process in which it goes into before they prepare it, you may not want to eat it, but when it gets into, you enjoy it. So it's one of the concerns that has been bothering my mind all this while. We know that the safety of it is not too cool, but we still can't do without it. So I think I don't know whether it's a contribution or an answer to your question. Thank you.
Because what you're trying to say is wache prepared in an unhygienic condition tastes better than the one prepared in an hygienic condition. Is that correct?
Simple as thank you.
Very good. So, Angela, over to you.
Well, I think I've heard that too, and in my trip here in Thailand, I see it all the time because people talk about, oh, have you tried this street food, or have you tried that street food? And I've got lots of pictures that at some point I will share it with people, but some of those pictures are very interesting because you see, I see a lot more than street food that people like to eat. I see the type of food, I see how they're handling it, I see the person who is preparing that food. I really want to see the people who are doing that, and then those circumstances. So there's a lot about that I think culturally we're used to seeing, or culturally we take certain things with a certain weight, and so that humanity between human beings comes into play. And so it's not just necessarily just hygiene, but it's also that it's that grandma who made something, and I really like that grandma and how she does it, that sort of thing.
Awesome. Return Hedwin's hand is up. So Return Hedwin, you have the floor. I'm sure you attempt to answer the question as well.
Just a small comment. Look, I think one issue relating to food safety, and here I'm talking about the processed and well-packaged food, is the way we store the food. The president, remember, a couple of weeks or months ago, somebody came to talk to us about issues about food labeling and expiry dates and best before dates. And now even there's a lot of confusion about whether we should be talking about best before or expiry dates or whatever it is. And I think we won't go there now. But is the way we store food that creates a lot of problems with respect to the food safety. Over here, one of the things you find out among some of the shops, in the morning, the items are brought out into the sun. In the evening, they are taken back inside. The next morning, the items are out again. They are in the sun. And when you look at the label says store in a cool place. Of course, that makes no sense of the whole concept of best before dates or whatever thing that you want. But then it also then affects the issue of food safety, because with the sunlight and all the things that go with it, nobody knows what else is happening to the food items as they are exposed to the sun, the UV light, whatever it is. So I think one of the things that we may need to take a critical look at is the way we, let me even use the word, handle food, especially processed food items, in terms of the storage conditions and so forth. So if something is of interest to you, there may be we should be looking at that aspect of the way that we handle food. I think to me that has a lot to bear on the safety of the food items. Of course, this idea about food tasting better when it's prepared, let's call it in the street environment, compared to when it's prepared in the home. Yeah, it's true. I mean, this I watch it that he's talking about. Anytime it's prepared for me in the house, it tastes different, and it doesn't excite me as much as when I have to buy it from the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edwin.
Thank you.
Your final comments, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a very important observation you made, because no matter how any company, how much they do in terms of labeling things, once someone acquires that, how they handle it is not something that the rest of us have much control over, including those who are trying to serve it or sell it in a business, right? But these are things where policy and some ways in which you have local governmental review or authority there, it's helpful there. But ultimately, I happen to think that it's the consumer that is the most powerful person, because if you see that, like you said, they put products out there in the sun, they take it back in, they make it out. I think, when you see it, and if you're able to speak up and say, hey, isn't that not supposed to be how you're supposed to handle it? I think if you have a few more people pushing that, you can actually see a change, and it's actually not, it's not punitive. So I think that is helpful. So that's a community action that we can take. But there's also the idea of, is it really a safety issue or is it a quality issue? And this is something where if you say best before date, most often that was calculated for quality issues, not necessarily for ultimately safety issues. Those two things tend to go hand in hand, because we look at quality inclusive of safety, but they really are sometimes a little bit different. And so when you have something in the circumstance of putting it in the sunlight, you may have a safety issue there, and it isn't a quality issue. So I think that those are the kinds of things that they become very challenging. And it really is something that we do need more attention given to.
Thank you very much, Doc. I see a late hand up. PhD William, fellow Terrence, we're supposed to be getting a meeting. I'll crave your indulgence for 15 more minutes. So we'll quickly take this question from PhD William, and we'll continue in the next phase. PhD William, you have the floor, please.
Hi. So this is just a quick contribution, and thanks for this brilliant talk. And I know there were a lot of contributions and questions, but I think a little contribution I want to make is from the health perspective. And I think it is also because we don't ask enough questions in our part of the world as to what kills people and what makes people sick. But we are increasingly seeing cancer at very early ages, much earlier in other parts of the world. We're seeing a lot of liver and kidney disease, and a lot of it is being traced to what people ingest. And so it then raises the question about the type of food we eat, the type of things we consume, and how its long-term effect is on our health. And if you look at the data is very worrying, you know, and so I think it's time that we put all the statistics together and see how much impact is this from the kind of food we eat, how it's prepared. I'll give you a typical example. Until a few years came into being, they were using car ties to burn the meat and then, you know, to skin the meat and so on. These are all carcinogenic. So why are we seeing cancer 20, 15 years earlier in our part of the world? So it's just something for us to think about, that forget about the taste alone, but what is it doing to us in our health and our longevity.
Thank you very much, PhD Will, for that contribution. Again, we would want to invite return John Davis to show appreciation to our speaker for us. And the reason for inviting is that you celebrated our Rotarian's birthday yesterday. So the birthday flavor and aura, I believe, should complement this appreciation I want to give to Dr. Angela Anandappa. Return John Davis.
Yeah, President, fellow Rotarians and guests. Dr. Anandappa, we would like to thank you so much for this insightful talk that you've given us this evening. And of course, for keeping up so late to talk to us. We are so grateful. And we have understood a few things this evening, which probably we took for granted earlier. As our Rotary tenets indicate, we would like to believe that all the things that you told us this evening are true, and that it is fair to all concerned, and also that it will build goodwill and better friendships for all of us, and everything you said will be beneficial to all concerned. Doctor, we thank you so much, and we believe you'll come and join us in Ghana sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Angela. We appreciate your time. And follow